Hello and welcome to the Awkward Conversations podcast. My name's Damien McCardle.
And my name's Kieran McColgan, and today our guest was Naomi Long of the Alliance Party.
First of all, I guess a belated happy birthday. I believe you had a milestone birthday in December there.
Yeah, I did. My friends have been trying to tell me that apparently your birthdays in lockdown don't count, which is great because I'm 48, because there's been two of them now. But yeah, I turned 50 in December, which still seems odd because I don't know what it's like for everybody else, but I do still feel like I did when I was 21 on the inside, even though I know I don't look that way, and even though I know people don't see me that way. I don't really think I've changed dramatically since then. So it all feels a bit odd, and it's one of those kind of situations where I look around other people who are my age and I'm shocked to find out that they're not older than me, or that they I don't know, seem just so much more mature than I feel. So maybe that's part of it, I don't know. But yeah, it does make you reflect though, just on like your kind of career and whatever. Because I mean, I like you changed careers, Kieran. I went from being a civil engineer for 10 years into politics, and I kind of fell into it. And I've done that for 20 years. And at 50, I kind of feel I've had two careers, and everybody says that you should have three. So I'm kind of wondering at what point will the third one happen, and what might it be? It's that kind of thing, because people say nowadays when pensions are edging towards 70 that we've all got three good careers in us. So we'll see what happens in the future. But the start's been okay. I've enjoyed it.
Oh, I don't know. I hope this is my last one anyway.
Early days.
I want to be retired when I'm hitting 50, Naomi.
Oh, listen, that's the dream. But unfortunately, when you work in public service of any kind, the money isn't there to retire at 50. I'll be working, I think, until I drop. I think that's just the nature of the beast. But if you love what you do, they say you never work a day in your life. I don't know if I love it that much, but that's the theory anyway. And I do enjoy what I do, and it is a privilege. So not complaining, and certainly not heading for early retirement anytime soon.
Yeah, I definitely get the sense that you enjoy what you do. You're very passionate and very active on Twitter, and you're very good to kind of positively say to people that whatever perhaps unkind thing they're saying is wrong, but you say it in a kind of way that sets them straight, but in a nice way.
I try. There are times when I write my first tweet, before I send it, I have other thoughts. I think I'm like everybody else. There's that moment where you're like, oh, and then you go, no, do you know what? You don't know what people are dealing with. And I mean, we all lose our rag at times and are snappier than we mean to be. And I'm as guilty of that as anybody. But you don't know what people are dealing with. You also don't know what they know about you, because sometimes people's perceptions of you are really bizarre and twisted. Like somebody said to me, you're just another posh old fart sitting around in luxury while your constituents starve. Now, for a girl from Mersey Street, who has worked my way up to where I am, and I don't for a minute suggest that hard work is the only factor. I was fortunate, I had a lot of support at home and everything else, but the idea that I'm a posh old fart, well, first of all, old, I was stunned because I'm like, I'm 50, give me a break here. But also, like, the idea I'm posh just made me laugh, because it's not something I'm accustomed to being told. But also the idea that you would be in this line of work if you didn't care about your constituents and put up with that kind of abuse on social media, it always baffles me why anybody would do this job if they really genuinely didn't care, because there are better jobs out there. There are jobs that pay better. There are jobs that have better hours and conditions. There are also jobs, where you don't have to go on social media and get abuse and all the rest of it. And I sort of think, why would people put themselves forward for this? If they're doing it right, there will always be those who will milk the system. But if you're doing it right, why would you do it? Unless it was because you cared. But then sometimes people have a perception of you that just isn't who you are, and you have to challenge back on that. I had somebody the other day as well tell me that I needed to be, I needed to be more blunt. And that one I'm taking away because I've never been told in all my life that I need to be more blunt. I have been advised to calm down. I have been advised to maybe step back a bit, but never have I been told that I lack directness. And, I just said, I'm taking that away. That shows I've changed. I've improved as a person if you don't think I'm blunt enough, because most people would say to me, like, never use a shovel if a spade will do the job, because that's just me. I just go straight in.
Yeah.
But yeah, you learn a lot
Damien
about,
doesn't know what those two things are.
you know, you honestly, you just, people just genuinely think that I'm very direct and very straight, and I just find that one a kind of entertaining. But it's an odd place, Twitter, and a lot of the stuff that's said there, it isn't real. It's not founded and grounded in anything. A lot of it is bots and people who just repeat tropes that they've heard elsewhere, and you can get, I mean, it's very powerful in the sense that it can allow you to reach people. But a while back, I reached the point where people were coming to me on Twitter and saying, I would like to say this. And they were DMing me, like, I would like to say this, or I think you're right about that, but I don't want to tweet you because then I will be getting what you're getting.
Yeah.
And that was the point where I made a distinct change in how I handled social media. Because up until that point, it was really only me that was affected. And so I didn't block the abuse. I didn't block the trolls, because I kind of thought, look, I'm a public representative. I need to be accountable. I need to be accessible. I need to be willing to engage. And at that point, I thought, this isn't just about me, though. This is about the people who see how I'm being treated and look to me for leadership and how to handle it. It's also about the young people who will ask me when we go to Q&A sessions, how do you handle social media abuse? And I'm giving them advice that I don't take myself. And it looks hypocritical, because I'm saying to them, use the block button. Don't put up with people saying things to you and, you know, on social media that you wouldn't accept it in private. Don't allow people to inhabit your private space. Don't allow the bullies to follow you home, you know, all that stuff. And then I do it. I allow it to happen. So I have said recently that, you know, if people are deliberately and repeatedly disingenuous, they accuse me of lying and impugn my integrity. Or if they dish out the kind of very personal abuse which I've been subjected to, you know, particularly recently, I will use the block button. I won't use it willy-nilly, and I won't use it because somebody disagrees with in politics or because somebody has a go at me. That's legitimate debate.
Yeah.
But I will use it if I think somebody is deliberately trolling, because I think I have a responsibility also to protect the people who want to engage with me from that onslaught that they will get from the trolls and the bullies. And so I have changed my strategy on that. And it's something that I suppose I had always been an early embracer when it came to social media. I mean, I had a Facebook account when I had nobody else to talk to on Facebook. You know, it's like I've always kind of liked social media, like the concept of it. I was on Twitter, and I've always engaged in Twitter and been really active because I think it's really important. But I do think that it has changed. The dynamics have changed. And at times it's a bit of a hellscape in that everybody on it just seems to be there to pull people down.
Yeah.
And the space for rational exchange is much more limited than it is on other platforms like Facebook or even Instagram. So I'm trying to kind of rebalance my Twitter, at least. I can't do it for everything. I'm trying to put out positive content as well to counterbalance the constant stream of negativity.
Yeah.
But it's a challenging platform, but really powerful, because you can connect with people so quickly over such a long distance. And I mean, we have met and recruited members and candidates via Twitter. People who, you know, Rachel Ferguson, her mum followed me on Twitter. I had said we needed more women in politics who would come forward and step up. And Rachel's mum sent her the message and said, you need to talk to this woman. This is what you should be doing. And Rachel kind of went, don't be silly. And her mum was like, she said, get in touch. And she did. And I went up and had coffee with her up in Derry. We had a good chat, got to know her. She joined the party. She ran for council, got elected, and is now our candidate for the assembly elections.
Right.
And she's a fantastic asset, not just to Alliance actually, but to the city in terms of what she's doing up in Derry and Strabane Council. So, you know, I think that you have to balance it. So there are real positives and strengths in Twitter, but yeah, you need to handle the trolls, and I'm more than ready to do that.
You don't, does it ever get to you? Do you ever lose any sleep? Do you ever talk to Michael and say, like, where do you see what this person wrote? Or
Yeah, I mean, there are times, I mean, we're all human, and some of the stuff that's said about me is vile. I mean, some of the personal abuse, the people who come along and go, "You're fat." I mean, I have mirrors in the house. I know what size I am. I'm under no illusions. That sort of stuff is playground stuff. And yes, it can be hurtful, but no, it's not going to affect how I feel about myself or anything else. I know my backstory. I know the rest, and it doesn't really matter. The stuff that I think really gets to me is the accusations that you don't care about things, or that you haven't done your best or whatever. And I guess that eats away at me, because I am the kind of person who will go the extra mile. I genuinely do care about things. And so when people accuse me of stuff that isn't true, that really, like, that does upset me at times. And sometimes it's very sensitive stuff, often particularly around the justice sphere, where people think I have powers to do things. I mean, they think I'm not the justice minister. They think I'm a member of the Justice League of America, because they think I can just like go around and kapow, and people will be just, that's, I'm going to be the enforcer. It's not how it works. I create the law. I kind of set the legislation in place, but I'm not the enforcer.
Yeah.
I don't take people to court. I'm not the judge and jury. So there is an independence in the justice system that is important politically. It's important for confidence, because some people might be quite happy for me to be a dictator and decide who's guilty, who's innocent, what can and can't be done. But would they be comfortable with any other politician being elected to this role having those powers?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be. So why would anybody want me to have them? There has to be separation on things like policing. And when people suggest it's because I'm either afraid to take a position, or that I don't care about the issue, or that I've no compassion for a victim, that does actually at times hurt, and has been quite upsetting at times, because that's never the reason. I mean, I have sat with victims who have gone through really hellish experiences, and it is moving and upsetting to hear their experience, and how difficult it's been. And what I've tried to do, particularly in the last 2 years, is to tackle the support we can offer to victims, the way we can get alongside them, and guide them through the system, because it is complicated and it is a stressful time. And when people come back at you and kind of say you don't care, that can really hurt. And maybe it doesn't all the time, because I know, again, it's some of it's trolling, but there are times when the accusation stings, and there are other times when Michael takes my phone off me and says enough. There are one or two people, and if I find myself having more than 2 tweets in exchange with them, I know my night on Twitter is over. It's like, you've answered him, now put the phone down. Do not get into a Twitter battle that goes on all night. I'm one of those people, that meme of like somebody going, "I'll be up in a while, dear, there's still something wrong on the internet." Well, I'm kind of that person. I just can't let go. So I end up getting into these battles with people who are never going to change their mind. They're never going to change my mind, but I love the debate. So I can't help myself. And there are times when I have to literally say, right, you've replied twice, enough, walk away.
Like, it's good when you've got truth on your side. It can embolden you to really
Well,
go
that's
for
it.
it.
That's it. That's what I believe anyway.
Yeah, one of the questions I'm actually glancing to the left here is I'll tell you the truth. I am actually going to read this because I want to articulate this in the right way. But your party being a left-leaning kind of compromise promoting party, which kind of traverses that tightrope between green and orange. Like, it is quite funny, because you can be accused of being Republican sympathizers and militant loyalists sometimes in the same day. How do you find that criticism, especially when it's coming from not necessarily the public, but people from other parties, and they do it quite, on the steps of Stormont, and they kind of say things which aren't true?
Yeah. I find it frustrating. And but it goes with the territory. In a society that is so divided along binary lines, anybody who steps outside those norms will immediately be distrusted by everybody, because people will say, well, why aren't you taking our side? And unfortunately, we have become so accustomed to life being a war between two tribes that we forget that actually it isn't. It's a shared experience between a diverse group of people, and we don't need to agree on every issue in order to still have common humanity and shared experiences. And so for me, the constitutional question is not the thing that I don't spring out of bed in the morning going, yes, another day to campaign for United Ireland, or great, we can really strengthen the union this morning. That isn't what gets me out of bed in the morning. I'm thinking, how do we make life better for the people I represent? What are the things that are worrying me and worrying them? What are the issues that are really they're struggling with? And those are my main focus. Now, other people will have a view on the constitutional position and still prioritize those things over it. And some of those people will be Alliance, but there will be many people in Alliance. In fact, the majority of people in Alliance, when they do surveys, are in my kind of category where it's like, we'll decide the constitutional thing when it comes up, but it's going to be an individual choice for every person. It's not going to be a party-led issue. Alliance won't be casting a block vote on behalf of everybody who votes for us.
Right.
Every individual will have their own vote. So why waste all of our energy as party politics trying to position on an issue over which, in the end of the day, we will have no influence? It will be down to individuals. Just like, I mean, at the election around Brexit, at the referendum, there were people who I'm sure voted Alliance in the past who voted for Brexit. And equally, there would be people, who voted Unionist in the past and voted against Brexit. So I think it's about being realistic that on those sorts of questions that are going to be decided by a referendum, let them get on with it. The part that annoys me is the misrepresentation, I guess. So I'm used to being viewed as kind of Schrodinger's politician. I'm both unionist and nationalist at the same time, and everybody's accusing me. I go on to Twitter and I'll be accused of, being a Republican sympathizer. Then I'm accused, often in the same thread, of being, a rabid unionist. And I guess it's sort of reassuring and that if both sides are criticizing you, you know that you've got some kind of balance. But where it becomes more than just annoying and irritating is where politicians feed that narrative in a really destructive way. And I experienced that back in 2014 or 2012, 2013 over the flags dispute, where the idea that we were part of some kind of pan-nationalist front, the ripping down of the Union flag language that was used, and the kind of 40,000 leaflets that were circulated in East Belfast and across a few constituencies, led to me getting death threats, bullets in the post, hoax, quite elaborate hoax bombs left at my office, my staff having to evacuate, every few days because of threats, me having to kind of review all of my security, and my colleagues having their homes and their offices burned. Now, I think when you know what that language can do and you continue to deploy it, you can't claim that you didn't know. You're doing it with reckless indifference to the fact that it's dangerous. And that, to me, you could excuse it the first time somebody says something reckless and that they might know the consequences. But people see the consequences of that language and they continue to use it. And to me, that crosses a line. That's no longer about the politics. That's about trying to paint a target on somebody's back and put them at risk. And I think that isn't politics. I think that that's wrong. And we've seen it again. It's not just in Northern Ireland that it happens. We've seen it with the whole Keir Starmer, Boris Johnson exchange, where Boris Johnson effectively repeats a right-wing slur that has been circulating on the extreme fringes of the internet for years. And Keir Starmer goes out and gets jostled and harassed and shouted at and harangued with words like nonsense, pedo protector, and Jimmy Savile being shouted at him.
That was frightening.
Johnson's standing there going, but I didn't do it. And I'm going, no, but you incite it when you use that, when you give that credibility by saying it as a politician, when you give that language and that approach credibility, even in the heat of a debate, and you refuse to apologize and withdraw it, you are giving license to people who do behave like that to behave like that. So when people talk about Alliance and they're aggressive towards Alliance, about pan-nationalist front and all this kind of stuff, I'm not suggesting those individuals would come and smash the windows in my office or bust up my car or throw golf balls at me. I mean, this is stuff that happened, or burn down Stuart Dixon's office. Of course they wouldn't. But they know when they say those things that it will trigger reactions in people who would, and they say it anyway. And I think that is the point where I'm no longer just irritated, I'm actually angry about it, because I think if you are dog whistling to people and placing others at risk, I don't care what your politics is, I think when you do that, you've crossed the line from being democratic to being undemocratic. If you are trying to incite some kind of a campaign to instill fear in somebody to control their behavior, that's intimidation. That's not politics, and it's not a political discourse. And I think we need to take account of the language we use and the words we use and the impact that they'll have on other people. Because if we don't do that, then it's free reign, frankly, for people to go out there and say and do things which are incredibly dangerous.
Like, I suppose it's hard to feel sorry for the people committing those acts, but I do in a way feel sorry for them because I feel like they're being led around by more controlling people who are maybe higher up on the social ladder, if you like, and
but there are also
ultimately
people
they're
who,
going to be the ones with the criminal records.
absolutely, there are people take the flags protest, for example. There were people who turned up at my office for years after that and protested on a daily basis. There were people who, went out and protested in the streets, and there were riots and all sorts of things. And those people ended up criminalized.
Yeah.
Not the politicians who wound it up and used the inflammatory language, knowing that it was a really emotive issue and that the community would be really volatile and that they would react that way. And instead of trying to reassure people that this was not the end of the world and that whilst they were disappointed, they would seek political solutions, they delivered literature that inflamed that volatility, that was like, pouring oil on a fire. And so from my point of view, that's a conscious choice. When you, for example, circulate literature with your opponent's phone numbers on it, and say, it's not like an organization going, contact your MLA at this email address and let them know how you feel. This is like, here's the horrible thing they're doing, these hateful bad people, here's their phone number. That's a very different dynamic to a charity saying, please email your MLA before the vote on Monday. It's a completely different dynamic, and they know that.
They're not sending you sarcastic memes.
Exactly. And so I think that I think when that was kicking off and you could see what was happening and you could see the dynamic, and people continued throughout that period to use that language, it just said to me, these are people who don't really care about the recklessness with which they speak. All they care about is the end, not the means. And the truth is, the end was never going to be what they wanted. What they wanted was to intimidate us, to push us away from making tough decisions, or force us into a position where we would reverse the decision. And actually, I think, if anything, it would have made it harder for that to ever happen, on the basis that once you have conceded that you can be controlled by mob rule, then you invite more of it.
Yeah.
So once it becomes that kind of dynamic where you're being threatened to do, unless you do something, you can't do that thing, because it's like saying the mob are okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of self-defeating, but it is also really destructive, because what happens then is the angry mob and the people who are really furious. And I mean, I'm not dismissing people's concerns. I understand that people can be angry about decisions we take, unhappy with the choices that we make. I'm not dismissing that. But when you tell them that protest or whatever and wind people up and get them really emotional and get them really volatile, and then you back away and you leave them to deal with the consequences, and also it doesn't achieve anything.
Yeah.
How much more frustrated are those people going to be at the end of the process than they were at the start?
Yeah, it's often forgotten that it was the Alliance Amendment that kept the flag present at all for 17, 18 days, whatever it is, as opposed to completely gone forever.
Do you know, I'm sure Sinn Féin, when they voted for that amendment, the first time Sinn Féin ever voted for the Union flag to fly anywhere at any time. So like, that was a break with tradition. I'm sure they expected to go back and get roasted in their constituencies for having done it. And unionism's reaction was so over the top about it that actually it eclipsed the fact that actually Sinn Féin, for the first time, had supported the flying of the Union flag, even in a limited and proportional way, with their votes.
That could have been a major story.
Yeah, it could have actually, if you look at it, could have been considered a win for unionism. And the Sinn Féin were accepting that we would be in line with the UK when it came to something as emotive as flags. And the kind of unionism kind of grasped defeat from the jaws of that victory.
Naomi, you might see some parallels there where if you are told that you have lost the game, then you will feel like a loser, like you've lost it. Well, you see some parallels there with the protocol insofar as someone who might not have any intimate detail with something has been told you have lost, you've been defeated on this issue, therefore you should feel quite aggrieved about it, can therefore be left feeling like they've had a
Absolutely.
raw deal and their community's been disadvantaged.
Yeah, well, I think there are a couple of things. I mean, I've said many times, if you tell people long enough they're a loser, eventually they'll believe you. I mean, that's the first thing. You keep repeating the narrative that people are losing, that they're losing, that they're a loser, they will eventually say, yeah, we must be, because otherwise, why would you keep saying it if it isn't true? So, you will convince people eventually that you're right. But Brexit is a study in how not to manage situations. People were encouraged to vote for something that wasn't realistic. They were going to get this 350 million a week extra for the health service, was never going to happen. It was going to be, all sunlit uplands and everything was going to be great. We were going to be not in the EU, but still have no border checks. We were going to rule the roost and everybody in the world was going to be coming, flooding to the UK, begging us for trade deals. Now, look, anybody with an ounce of wit knew none of that was going to happen. But we knew the hard detail because that's what we're paid to know. As politicians, we're over that all the time. When they see me saying, look, that is not going to happen, and they see another politician saying, yes, it is, then they think it's a matter of opinion. So people assume it's a matter of opinion as opposed to a matter of fact. A matter of fact was that once you left the EU, you were going to be a third country, you were going to be treated differently, there were going to have to be checks. There was no avoiding that unless you were willing to align. If you weren't willing to align and go in within the customs union, there was going to be all of that. So there's the unrealistic promises, and all politicians do it, where we try to be ambitious and aspirational, and finding a balance between that and just flat out lying to people about what can be done. I think is one of the areas in politics, I think, where you need real integrity. And I always say to our guys, try not, however ambitious you want to be, don't overpromise and underdeliver. Look at what you can do and be honest and say, these things we can do, this thing we can't. And if we're honest with people about what we can and can't do, they may well be frustrated with us, but you will build trust. And if you build trust, then people will see that when you say you will do something, you will. And when you say you can't, they'll believe you that you can't, and it will be a better conversation. So Brexit was about raising unrealistic expectations. So people were automatically, after Brexit, going to feel deflated and let down because it was never going to be what they thought it was. But also Brexit allowed everybody to have in their own head their imagination of what it would be, because it was ill-defined. So everybody's Brexit was different, and everybody thought they were voting for something that they wanted, and they were assuming they were all voting for the same thing. They weren't. They were voting for a word that could mean anything to anybody. And so in the end, what you have was a situation set up where it was overpromised, it was always going to underdeliver, but also it was so nebulous that there were so many competing versions of Brexit that no single delivery of Brexit was going to satisfy all those competing versions. Then you get into the situation where you have somebody like Boris Johnson, who wouldn't know the truth if it came up and bit him on the ass, frankly, and goes out there and just plain lies about what has been done. Boris Johnson knew there were going to be checks as a result of the protocol. He knew. He was told.
Have you seen that video? I think it's in maybe Ballymena, and it's with a bunch of DUP voters, and it's like, if somebody asks you for paperwork, you send it to me and I'll rip it up.
Yeah.
And these were legitimate businessmen saying, like, are you sure about this? And I think they knew he was lying.
They knew he was lying. And the thing about it is that kind of performance that he does, whilst it may beguile people or seem charming or affable, and he might be great fun and all the rest of it, I personally don't think that. I actually think it's kind of narcissistic and manipulative, but some people seem to fall for it. I just think that approach of lying to people about the facts then leads people, when the facts expose themselves, to feel let down and angry. So people who were angry that Brexit wasn't really the Brexit they'd voted for then get the protocol, and Johnson's going, it's great, it's fantastic. oh, it's not so good, we need to trigger Article 16. Then they're let down again. Every time they go to him for help, he throws them under the bus. I mean, by now the DUP should be getting a contract with TransLink for servicing, because they're more often under the bus than on it. And it's just relentless, because every time he does this, because the only thing Boris Johnson cares about is being Prime Minister. It's about self-preservation.
Yeah.
He will say and do anything in the moment to survive, and he will worry about the consequences later. But with public trust, you can't behave that way. You know, Brandon Lewis stood with Lauren Port in the background with checks taking place, saying that there would be no checks. That's how ludicrous it gets. You know, and the whole situation is so surreal when politicians just straight up lie about stuff, but they do it in a way that is like gaslighting, because you can see that they're lying. They can see that you see that they're lying. You know that they know that you think that they're lying, but nobody's saying you're lying. And, you know, it frustrates me. It takes me back to the time when Boris did the hospital visit and was confronted by the gentleman who said he was only there for photo op.
That's right.
And Boris was, while the cameras were rolling and the cameras were clicking and all the rest, Boris was going, no, it's not a photo op. There's no press. There's no press. And we were watching it on the news. It's like, there is press. We are watching it on the news because there is press. This is not a fly on the wall documentary. This is the press publishing. It's not denial. And you then start to think, am I mad?
Yeah.
Like, am I mad? They are saying these things that are just counterfactual, and I know they are. But when I say them, they go, "No, that's not that. No."
Like,
and it's bizarre. It's the Nadine Dorey school of like just flat out denial. And I find it really. It's the most frustrating thing to me, and I think it's the most dangerous dynamic in politics, because I think it creates division in society, but I also think it fuels anger with politicians and disenfranchisement, in the sense that people still have the vote, but they think it's worthless because the people that they vote for can't be trusted and won't do what they say they're going to do. And so it fuels anger and resentment in communities, and it means that politics isn't functional. And when politics isn't functional, then people take to the streets. And I just think it's a dangerous dynamic. It's that Trumpian politics of just ignoring what is as plain as the nose in your face, lying through your teeth, and believing rightly, as he said, that if he walked into the middle of, you know, Central Park and shot somebody or whatever, that he'd still get the votes. And that's the dangerous thing, when politicians are allowed to become unaccountable because people say, oh, it's just a quirk. It's not a quirk. It's a personality defect, and it makes you unsuitable for office. And I
seem to have lost Naomi there. It it reminds me of where we're talking about how Boris Johnson had Keir Starmer, and he in the House of Commons, he mentioned that Keir Starmer failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile or whatever, and implying that he somehow protected him or whatever. And that statement was literally in the same, was like either the sentence before or the sentence after, where he denied that he lied about, and he denied that he was a liar about the number 10 party. So it's like, you know, he tells a lie in the middle of a statement about how he's not a liar. It's comical, like.
But then Ian Blackford, SNP leader in the Commons, got ejected for calling Boris a liar. You know, so people will be confused watching that.
Yeah, like the whole parliamentary language thing, like regardless of how many lies Boris tells, they're never ever allowed to say, Boris Johnson, you're a liar.
Well, I think someone was talking about legislation now, a legislation change, which makes it okay to actually call someone a liar, which up until now is not allowed in the House, even if someone is telling lies.
Yeah, and there doesn't seem to be any consequence for the likes of like Trump and Boris Johnson. Like, there never seemed to be any massive consequence for the like the sheer volume of lies told. Like, it never seemed like they could just keep going and going and going and going, and if anything, they were almost rewarded for it.
if you campaign on personality as opposed to policy, then you don't really have to fear a loss of popularity when you're not doing the things that you said you were going to be doing. As long as you're still the person that you were when you went out to the voters, you're okay. And
Do,
that's what
do,
you find with Boris Johnson.
do you think there always has to be an element of personality, or do you think you can get away with not having much of a personality and be
Well,
like a
this is
leader
the
of a
decade
party?
of populism. I think we might have Naomi back. No. Well, this is the decade of populism. Trump elected, Johnson elected, Brexit achieved.
Yeah.
Oh, we do.
Hi, Naomi.
We have the whole office is color coordinated there. Purple's the favorite color, it seems.
Yeah, well, not really. Just it happens to be the one that I've got here. Apologies, I'm having some technical issues with my laptop.
Oh, you're
So
okay.
I've switched over to my phone. So apologies for the
no.
disruption. But for some reason it kicked me out there when I wasn't expecting it. So apologies if that's broken up your podcast.
No, you're
Maybe
okay.
give me a bit of peace and quiet to gather your thoughts.
What was going to say? One of the things we meant to get to, but we've been drawn in with the things that we've been talking about is the role of faith. So especially here, most people do grow up in a certain denomination, and I believe you grew up in Presbyterian backgrounds, and so I was wondering, how can that be reconciled with your job, and how can that reconcile with when you're working, especially on social change and social issues such as marriage law, abortion, gay rights, things that directly contradict, for example, religious teachings. Can the two things be reconciled?
I think so. I mean, first of all, I actually grew up Church of Ireland, believe it or not. I grew up Church of Ireland, and then I became a Presbyterian when I married, and I had been attending the church actually for a while before that. I think they can be reconciled. In fact, more than that, I would say that the positions that I have taken on those issues is not in spite of my beliefs and my faith, but because of them. Because from my perspective, I'm not here to judge people's lives. I'm not here to sit in judgment on individuals, but I am here to show compassion. I'm here to assist and help people and to do good when I can. And that is, I think, how I should behave, to treat other people with dignity and respect and expect to be treated in the same way myself. And it is for me to demonstrate love to other people, not to demonstrate hatred or rejection or any of those things. And so for me, the reason that, first of all, for me, I passionately believe that we need to treat people as equals before the law. I think we were all created equal, and therefore we should all be treated equally when it comes to the law, when it comes to our human rights, when it comes to all of those things. So I think it's really important that we give people that dignity and respect that I think every individual deserves. That is part of the approach that I take, whether it comes to issues of marriage equality, whether it comes to issues around how we treat people in our prisons, whether and rehabilitation and the importance of a second chance and the opportunity to change. All of those things are really informed by my Christian faith. But also, ultimately, I don't believe that my job as a Christian is to create a kind of Christian theocracy. Yeah. I believe in democracy. I believe that people have freedom of choice. So as a Christian, if I don't want to do something, I shouldn't be compelled to. If I believe it's wrong, I should have that freedom to be able to live my life as I wish. I should expect the freedom to that freedom to be protected by the state, for me to worship as I choose, share my faith as I choose, exchange views with people and so on. But my job is not to constrain other people's freedom of religion and belief. One of the things I would have loved to have done in this term in the Assembly, and there just wasn't time because I was bringing forward a bill which was it was meant to be a miscellaneous provisions bill, but it had to be restricted because of time. But what I wanted to do was bring forward the abolition of blasphemy laws in Northern Ireland, because I don't believe that it is right for us to go to places like Pakistan and so on, and say to them, or Saudi Arabia or wherever it might be, and say to them, your blasphemy laws contravene human rights, whilst we have blasphemy laws on the books here, even though we don't use them. And I think it is right. People should be able to have freedom of religion, but also freedom from religion.
Yeah.
So you should be free to practice your faith. You should be free to make your choices in good conscience, and that's important. And sometimes that is a balance. So it's not always straightforward, as with any rights. But actually, the right to freedom of religion is one of the most protected freedoms that we have in society, and has been consistently upheld in the European Court of Human Rights and also in the Supreme Court in the UK. But for me, the freedom from religion piece is also really important.
Yeah.
People should not have religion and religious standards imposed on them if that's not the standards and the beliefs that they hold. They should be free to practice their lives whatever way they want. And so even if people don't agree with my views on equal marriage or abortion or other things, that's okay. But I still think as Christians, we have a duty to create a liberal and equal and tolerant society where people can make those choices for themselves, can have bodily autonomy, can live the relationships they wish, and make the choices in their life that they want. And even if somebody fundamentally disagrees with my views, I think that they should be able to do that, and they should uphold the same standards I do. So I have never said the DUP shouldn't be able to have a view when it comes to equal marriage, but I think block and change in the law is quite different from saying I personally would not enter into a same-sex relationship because I believe it wouldn't be compatible with my faith. I think that that's the problem we have, and we see it in other places. We see it with the Taliban when they tell women how they should dress modestly, when they tell people what they should and shouldn't do. We criticize it when we see it in other countries where, based on their faith or on lack of faith, people are persecuted. But we are sort of immune to seeing it in our own society when we use faith as an excuse to subjugate or control other people. And I don't think it is acceptable for that to happen. So I am, if you like, I am a secularist in the sense, not that I want to see religion excluded from the public space. In fact, I think it has an important contribution to make, but it should not control the public space. It should be possible for people of all faiths and none to have a stake in society, to be able to live their lives with freedom, and to be respected under the law. The problem, I suppose, was put really well. I was on the Religious Freedom All-Party Group in Parliament, and one of the UN rapporteurs at the time came and did a really good presentation to Parliament. And he put it really well in that he said, people of faith, religious freedom tends to be ignored because people who are religious fear freedom, in that they feel that people will do things that they believe to be wrong. And people who love freedom don't really like religion because they think religion is all about control. And so nobody really champions religious freedom because they see it as everybody's slightly uncomfortable with it. I think it's about moving away from seeing faith as control and religion. But I'm not a religious person, if you want to put it that way, but I do have a strong faith. And I think that for me, the Bible is about relationships, and that is the kind of relational faith that I have.
So you would be saying choice for everyone, but domination by no one?
Yeah, I think it has to be. Because of our history, we are, as Christians, in a very privileged position. And we should never forget that. We have a huge privilege. So, my main faith holidays align with the faith holidays, the bank holidays, and everything else. Christmas Day is a holiday. Boxing Day is a holiday. Easter Day. So all of my main religious celebratory times are statutory holidays, and everything else in the calendar kind of works in our favor. Those are privileges. We've been involved in setting up the institutions in society for many years, whether it's education or training or even, kind of health support and things like that. So we have those privileges, but we need to be very conscious as the privileged people in society to remember that there are other people who hold their faith just as dearly, but don't have the privilege of it being acknowledged, recognized, reflected in our calendar, who, you know, can't celebrate the way they might if they were in a country where they were the predominant faith. So we, I think, need to be careful with our privilege, that we're not about excluding other people or limiting what they can do. And we particularly need to be conscious, I think, when it comes to people who are vulnerable, isolated, or excluded. And I mean, you know, if we're talking faith, I always look at, for example, you know, if you look at the stories in the Bible where Jesus interacted with people, he didn't go to the great and the good in the temple and sit around and, you know, share anecdotes with them and you shoot the breeze. You know, he went in and he turned the tables and said, why are you behaving like hypocrites? He challenged the Pharisees when it came to divorce. You know, he challenged people who looked down on women by going and talking to women on their own, which was a cultural no-no. He spoke to people who, you know, had lived lives that were, you know, well, and by modern day terms, probably not that exciting, but in those days, they had many husbands. You know, there's question, was this lady a prostitute? Was she somebody who had just multiple partners or whatever? But Jesus reached out to her because he felt she was of worth and of value. And I think as Christians, we lose sight of our faith if we lose sight of the fact that it is in the marginalized places with the people who are in need and who are hurting that we can make the most difference in our in life. So the idea that people who are traditionally excluded from society, rejected by society, marginalized in society, that we would be part of a move to keep them there, to me, is what is contrary to Christian belief. I think our job is to go to them and support them and give them the dignity and the respect and the opportunity that I think every single one of them deserves.
We had a few shorter, snappy things that we wanted to ask everybody, Naomi, just to see what their views were. So first of all, just a quick one: voting rights for 16-year-olds, yes or no?
Yes.
If you got a shot at another department, apart from justice, what would it be?
Ooh, communities, because of what I just said about housing.
Favorite place to visit on this island?
Oh, difficult, because there's so many places I love.
Someone's going to be offended.
I'm going to go for Five Finger Strand in Donegal.
Oh, nice, good choice. Favorite place to visit overseas?
Ooh, again, there's a long list. I'm going to go. How big or small does it have to be? I'm going to go South America, just because I've seen some amazing things. So if I had to choose a continent, I'd probably choose South America.
Very nice.
A favorite country, favorite place to visit in South America, probably Cartagena in Colombia.
Oh wow!
Oh, nice.
Fantastic.
Favorite thing that you're watching right now on Netflix or TV?
At the minute, weirdly, I am binge watching old episodes of Vera.
Oh yeah.
I love a good crime drama. So for some reason I've just got into it, and that's what I'm binge watching at the minute. The last thing that I'm trying to think what the last thing I binge watched on Netflix was. Can't remember, and I'm holding off on This Is Us until after the elections because I want to finish it, but I don't want to do it now when I'm busy. I want to
you'll get no doors knocked if you start binging a show.
Exactly. Whereas with Vera, each is self-contained, so you don't need to dedicate hours and hours to it. Because I'm one of those people, when I read a book, I keep going till I get to the end. And I'm the same with Netflix. It's like, I'll watch the next one, I'll watch the next one, I'll watch the next one. And before I know the sun's rising and I'm still binging, so I just need to watch.
First concert you went to?
Oh, I can't remember. I'm trying to think. I know it was in the Ulster Hall, but I can't think what it would have. I can't think now because it was a couple. It might have been Wet, Wet, Wet in the Ulster Hall back in the day, but it might have been something else. I can't remember. I know the best concert I've been to was definitely Aerosmith, in Dublin. and it was brilliant.
Oh, very good, very good. Who would your best pal be on both the unionist benches and the nationalist benches?
Oh, I don't
Or
really have
person
it.
that you're closest to, or person you
Yeah,
would chat to in the canteen?
I don't really. This sounds really antisocial, but I don't really have any friends in politics as such. Most of my friends are outside politics, but I could pretty much chat to anybody. I mean, there are one or two people I wouldn't take my tray over to sit at their table, you know. There's always people like that, but there are very few people in the assembly that I couldn't sit and have a chat with or have an exchange with and get on pretty well. I get on very well in the executive with Nicola Mullen. We work pretty well together on a number of issues. I get on quite well with Nicola. And, I like, in terms of people to work with, I get on very well at the minute. Mervyn Story is the chair of the Justice Committee. And I find him, we're probably at completely different places politically and in terms of our kind of view of society and everything else. But I find him a pleasant and actually very decent and trustworthy kind of person to work with. And I find him very reasonable. But there's nobody, there probably are one or two if I really thought about it that it would go, no, I wouldn't sit and have lunch with them. But they're very few. Most of the people in the assembly, despite the fact that we have major differences of opinion, actually we can get on. Some are more annoying than others.
That
but
sounds like a regular workplace there.
I think I was going to say, I think probably it would be finding somebody that didn't want to run away if I took my tray over to them at lunchtime. That would be the bigger challenge. I never assumed they would want to spend any time with me.
Yeah, look, it's been very interesting talking to you today, and we're way over on time. So, you've been very generous with your time, so we do appreciate your time, Naomi.
Not at all. It's been a pleasure.